Finn the human grows up in a world shaped by magic, memory, and the quiet echoes of a past he did not live. He journeys across lands filled with wonder and danger, meets creatures who carry entire histories in their eyes, and becomes a part of stories that existed long before he was born. Through all of this, acceptance slowly becomes one of the most important themes in his life. Not acceptance as surrender, but acceptance as understanding, acceptance as clarity, acceptance as peace. Finn begins life already surrounded by questions. He does not know where he comes from, why he was separated from his original family, or what his earliest days looked like. These unanswered questions follow him for years, shaping the way he sees the world and himself. Yet even with these uncertainties, Finn grows into someone who learns to accept the unknown with a mix of curiosity and strength. This attitude forms the foundation of everything he becomes. Acceptance for Finn is never a single moment. It is a continuous process. It grows with him. It shifts with him. It becomes part of the emotional fabric that holds his heart together. Early in life, he sees the world in simple shapes: danger and safety, right and wrong, victory and loss. These simple shapes eventually give way to more complex truths. People can hurt you and still care for you. Destinies can change. Love can take different forms. Even the land itself can shift in ways that are not easy to understand. Finn learns to accept these truths, slowly, gently, each one becoming another step along the path of growing up. As Finn travels through forests, kingdoms, wastelands, and strange realms beyond normal reality, he begins to see that acceptance is not passive. It is active and thoughtful. It requires attention. It requires time. It requires honesty with oneself. Finn learns that acceptance does not mean giving up on something. It means acknowledging the truth of it, then choosing how to move forward. This becomes a constant theme in his life. He accepts the nature of others, the nature of the world, and eventually the nature of himself. Acceptance guides Finn in moments both large and small. When he faces a challenge he cannot immediately solve, he pauses instead of forcing himself beyond his limits. When he meets someone who behaves in confusing ways, he tries to understand what lies beneath the surface. When he encounters parts of himself that he does not fully recognize, he gives himself patience. Finn slowly embraces the idea that acceptance is a form of strength. It allows him to stand still when needed and to move when the moment calls for it, without losing sight of who he is. This gradual understanding begins with the simplest moments. A walk through a quiet landscape teaches him the value of breathing through uncertainty. A conversation with Jake teaches him that acceptance often comes from listening rather than speaking. A moment with Princess Bubblegum teaches him that people carry complexities he might not see at first. A quiet evening with BMO teaches him that joy can be found by accepting things as they are, without rushing toward what they could be. These gentle lessons accumulate until Finn realizes that acceptance is woven into nearly every part of his life. Acceptance also helps Finn cultivate compassion. The more he encounters the flaws, dreams, fears, and wounds of others, the more he understands that everyone is doing their best with the circumstances they carry. He sees anger softened by sadness. He sees cruelty softened by regret. He sees confusion softened by vulnerability. Finn learns to accept the truth that people are rarely one thing. This truth transforms him from an eager adventurer into someone capable of seeing the emotional layers beneath actions. Acceptance also shapes the way Finn handles change. The land of Oo shifts often. People come and go, relationships evolve, responsibilities grow heavier. Finn learns that fighting change only brings frustration. Accepting change allows growth. It allows peace. It allows wisdom. Finn becomes someone who can face transitions without losing the tenderness in his heart. He becomes someone who can look at the past with gratitude, the present with focus, and the future with hope. This chapter of Finn's story sets the stage for everything that follows. Acceptance becomes the lens through which he makes sense of his identity, his relationships, his mistakes, and his purpose. It becomes the emotional tool that helps him heal from pain, understand others deeply, and step into adulthood without losing the brightness that defines him. Finn's journey of acceptance is not a straight line. It curves and bends. It challenges him. It pushes him to see the world in ways he never expected. Yet through this journey, Finn grows into someone capable of holding both joy and sorrow without breaking. Acceptance becomes the quiet power behind Finn's compassion. It becomes the steady force behind his courage. It becomes the gentle truth that guides him through every transformation. As he learns to accept his past, his flaws, his hopes, and the ever-shifting world around him, Finn becomes more than a hero. He becomes a young man who understands the value of being present with reality as it is, while still believing in the possibility of something better. This is the meaning of acceptance in Finn's life. Not compliance, not surrender, but understanding. Understanding that opens the heart. Understanding that encourages growth. Understanding that welcomes change. Understanding that carries him through his entire journey, shaping the way he sees the world and the way he sees himself. Acceptance is Finn's quiet strength. The chapters ahead will explore each layer of this strength, reflecting how he becomes someone who can look at life in all its complexity and say, with gentle honesty, that he is ready to understand it. Finn the human begins life with a mystery surrounding him. Long before he becomes an adventurer, long before he learns swordplay or discovers emotional depth, he exists as a small child left alone in the woods. His earliest memory is not of a home, a parent, or a place of belonging. It is the moment he slipped on a leaf, fell to the ground, and cried out. That single moment leads him toward the people who become his family. This origin story is simple, but the emotional weight it carries follows Finn throughout his life. Acceptance of this beginning becomes one of the first and most important challenges he faces. Finn grows up in a world where nearly every creature knows something about its origins. Magic beings know their creators. Royalty knows their lineage. Even the quiet creatures of the woods trace their lives through generations of instinct and memory. Finn stands apart. He is one of the last humans in Oo, yet he did not grow up surrounded by humans. He learns about his species not through experience, but through stories, hints, and rare encounters. This absence forms a space in his heart that he must learn to understand. As a young child, Finn does not yet grasp the emotional significance of being found rather than born into a family. Jake's parents, Joshua and Margaret, care for him with warmth and protection. They do not treat him like an outsider. Finn grows up loved. He grows up safe. This early stability allows him to develop courage and trust. Yet, as he matures, he begins to sense the gap in his history. The questions he carries do not feel like wounds at first. They feel like quiet echoes that follow him in moments of stillness. Where did he come from? Who held him before Joshua and Margaret? What kind of life existed before that moment in the woods? Acceptance of these unknowns does not come easily. Finn attempts to fill the gaps with imagination. Sometimes he pictures a heroic past. Sometimes he wonders if his original family searched for him. Other times he considers the possibility that his earliest days were simply a fragment of a larger story that ended before he could remember it. These shifting thoughts reveal how early experiences shape self-perception. Finn's mind tries to make sense of the silence where memories should be. As he grows older, Finn begins to accept that not knowing is a part of his story. He does not receive answers wrapped neatly in revelation. His origins remain fragmented. Instead of dwelling on the loss, Finn learns to embrace the life that grew from it. Joshua and Margaret become his real parents. Jake becomes his brother. Their home becomes the foundation on which he builds identity. Finn accepts that belonging does not always come from blood. Sometimes belonging is created through care, loyalty, and shared life. This acceptance allows Finn to develop a healthy, emotional foundation. Instead of defining himself by absence, he learns to define himself by connection. He sees his origin not as a flaw, but as one of the circumstances that shaped him into someone capable of deep empathy. Finn knows what it feels like to be alone from the start. That experience gives him a unique sensitivity to others who feel abandoned, cast aside, or misunderstood. Acceptance turns his earliest vulnerability into one of his greatest strengths. When Finn eventually meets his biological father, the emotional impact carries a different weight. Finn does not approach this moment from a place of longing for a missing parent. He approaches it with curiosity, hope, and caution. His heart does not expect completion. It seeks understanding. His father does not offer the comfort or connection Finn once imagined. This disappointment could have reopened the wound of abandonment. Instead, Finn accepts the truth of who his father is. He accepts that biological ties do not guarantee emotional safety. This acceptance frees him from expectations that might have harmed him. It allows him to see his adoptive family with even more gratitude. Through this experience, Finn learns another important truth. Origins are part of a story, but they do not dictate the entire story. Finn accepts that his beginnings were uncertain, but he also accepts that he grew into someone loved and supported. His childhood is shaped not by what he lacked, but by what he gained through the family that chose him. Acceptance of his origins also influences Finn's relationship with identity. Being one of the last humans in Oo gives him a sense of uniqueness. At times, it gives him confusion. He wonders what it means to be human in a world where magic is common and humans are rare. Acceptance helps him navigate this question. Instead of searching for a rigid definition, he learns to see humanity through emotion, courage, compassion, and curiosity. Finn accepts that being human is not about numbers or history. It is about how he lives. This acceptance becomes essential when he meets other humans later in life. He discovers that even among his own species, he is different. Instead of feeling separated, Finn accepts that differences do not diminish connection. He learns that individuals carry different stories even when they share origins. Acceptance allows him to connect without needing sameness. He becomes comfortable with the fluid nature of identity. Acceptance of his early life also teaches Finn the value of found family. Jake becomes more than a brother. He becomes a guide, a partner, a source of comfort. BMO becomes a friend who fills the home with creativity and companionship. Princess Bubblegum, Marceline, and countless others become part of Finn's emotional ecosystem. Acceptance allows Finn to hold all these bonds with appreciation rather than clinging. He understands that connection is chosen and maintained, not given automatically. Finn's childhood origins shape his worldview in practical ways too. He grows up with a natural instinct to help others because he knows what it feels like to be vulnerable. He grows up with an eagerness to explore because he senses the world as a place that once held mystery for him. He grows up with resilience because he overcame uncertainty before he could speak. Acceptance transforms these early challenges into emotional strengths that accompany him into adulthood. Acceptance of his origins also softens Finn's approach to other characters who hide their pasts or struggle with identity. When he meets people who carry painful histories, he does not judge. He listens. He comforts. He waits. He understands that origins can be complicated, fragmented, or filled with sorrow. His own experience teaches him that healing comes from acceptance, not avoidance. This makes him a rare presence in U, someone who can connect without demanding explanation. In the end, Finn's acceptance of his childhood origins creates a foundation for everything he becomes. It shapes his compassion, his resilience, his openness, and his ability to form deep connections. His journey begins with uncertainty, yet he grows into someone defined by understanding rather than fear. Acceptance allows him to transform an unknown beginning into a life rich with meaning. It becomes the first step in a long path toward emotional maturity, setting the stage for every lesson that follows. Growing up in the land of U means facing shifting landscapes, both outside and within. Forests transform overnight. Magic pulses unpredictably. Creatures evolve. Seasons change in ways that do not always follow natural rules. Finn grows up inside a world that reflects the emotional transitions he experiences as he becomes older. His body changes, his views deepen, and his feelings expand in ways he does not fully expect. Acceptance of these changes becomes one of the most profound and necessary lessons of his journey. In the earliest days of his adventures, Finn approaches life with a sense of simplicity and certainty. Danger appears, he confronts it. Someone needs help, he steps forward. He sees himself as the hero who will always know what to do. Growing up challenges this perspective. His body grows taller, his voice shifts, his emotions become more layered. The clear boundaries he once relied on begin to blur. These shifts do not arrive all at once. They come slowly, humbly, through everyday experiences that push him toward maturity. One of the first changes Finn notices is that not every problem can be solved with enthusiasm. In childhood, his energy feels endless, his courage immediate. As he matures, he begins to feel the weight of the choices he makes. Suddenly, he must consider consequences. He must think about how his actions affect others. This awareness creates moments of uncertainty. Finn learns to accept that hesitation is not weakness. It is reflection. It is growth. It is part of becoming someone who acts with intention rather than impulse. Growing up also introduces Finn to emotional complexity. Feelings arrive in new shapes. He experiences joy that feels deeper, but also sadness that lingers longer. He feels new forms of attachment, new forms of frustration, and new forms of confusion. These emotions challenge him because they refuse to fit into simple categories. Finn learns that acceptance means allowing himself to feel everything without trying to force emotions into neat boxes. He discovers that every feeling holds meaning, and accepting those feelings helps him understand himself. Physical changes mirror emotional ones. Finn grows stronger, but he also becomes more aware of his limits. He can leap, climb, and fight with skill, yet he sometimes feels tired, overwhelmed, or unsure. Growing up removes the invincible feeling of childhood and replaces it with a more grounded understanding of effort and vulnerability. Finn learns to accept that strength has many forms. Physical power matters, but emotional endurance matters just as much. Acceptance becomes especially important when Finn faces experiences he was not prepared for. Moments of heartbreak, disappointment, or confusion challenge him at a deeper level than any battle. He finds himself looking inward instead of outward, trying to understand why he feels the way he does. Growing up requires him to recognize that emotions are not obstacles to be conquered, but signals to be listened to. Acceptance allows him to feel without shaming himself for the intensity of those feelings. Another important part of growing up is learning that relationships evolve. Finn watches friendships shift as he matures. Jake remains at his side, but their dynamic changes as Finn becomes more independent. Princess Bubblegum becomes someone he admires in a new way, yet also someone he learns to see with realistic understanding. Marceline becomes a friend who helps him navigate emotional landscapes he does not know how to name. Finn accepts that relationships are living things that grow with time, rather than staying frozen in childhood simplicity. Acceptance of growing up also means letting go of certain illusions. Finn once believed that heroes never feel unsure or conflicted. Through experience, he learns that doubt is natural. He learns that mistakes do not erase goodness. He learns that responsibility grows heavier with age, but so does wisdom. Finn begins to accept the idea that maturity is not about perfection. It is about learning how to keep going, even when things become complicated. One of the most transformative moments in Finn's growth is when he realizes that he cannot protect everyone from pain. He carries a generous heart, one that tries to shield others from hurt. Growing up teaches him that pain is a part of life. He cannot erase it for others, but he can support them through it. This acceptance shifts him from a reactive hero into a compassionate one. He understands that his role in the world is not always to stop harm, but sometimes to help others heal. Finn's growing maturity also brings a deeper understanding of himself. He begins to notice what brings him peace, what challenges him, and what inspires him. He becomes more thoughtful about his place in Oo. He questions not only what he does, but why he does it. This introspection allows him to form a more complete identity. Acceptance becomes the guiding force that helps him embrace who he is becoming, even when the changes feel unfamiliar. Acceptance of growing up also teaches Finn patience. He learns that answers do not always appear immediately. Strength does not always show itself quickly. Healing does not happen in a day. Finn's growing patience helps him face emotional challenges with calm rather than panic. He learns to accept the pace of life rather than forcing it to match his expectations. This patience becomes one of the quiet strengths that define his later years. At times, Finn feels the nostalgia that comes with leaving childhood behind. He remembers days of simple adventure with Jake, days when problems felt small and the world felt like a playground. Growing up introduces responsibilities and emotional layers that complicate those earlier joys. Acceptance allows Finn to honor his past without longing to return to it. He can look back with love and still move forward with hope. This balance becomes a sign of his emotional maturity. As he continues to grow, Finn begins to understand that maturity is not a destination. It is a process. It unfolds throughout life. Acceptance allows him to embrace this truth. He does not expect to know everything or to master every challenge. He accepts that he will continue to learn and change. This humility keeps his heart open, curious, and gentle. In the end, Finn's acceptance of growing up becomes one of the most important aspects of his development. It helps him move from childhood into adulthood without losing the light that defines him. He remains brave, compassionate, and hopeful, but he becomes wiser, calmer, and more self-aware. Acceptance allows him to take each step with clarity and trust. It becomes the quiet truth beneath his actions, guiding him as he continues his journey through U and through his own life. Finn begins his life believing that a hero is someone who always does the right thing. In childhood, this belief feels natural and comforting. He sees danger, he charges forward. He sees someone hurting, he steps in. His heart burns with certainty. In those early years, he imagines that being a hero means being flawless. It means always finding the best solution, always saving the day, and always feeling proud of the choices he makes. But as Finn grows older, the world reveals a gentler and more truthful lesson. Imperfection does not take away from heroism, it is part of it. Acceptance of imperfection becomes one of the quiet turning points in his life, helping him understand both himself and the people around him. The first signs of this lesson appear in small moments. Finn tries to fix something simple, only to discover that his approach makes things messier. He attempts to help someone, only to realize he misunderstood what they needed. He steps into a conflict with enthusiasm, but the outcome does not unfold the way he imagined. These moments leave him confused at first. They stir emotions he does not yet know how to sort through: frustration, embarrassment, guilt. Yet even in these early experiences, Finn begins to understand that imperfection is part of learning. He starts to accept that mistakes are not failures. They are opportunities to grow. As Finn's adventures become more complex, so do the situations he faces. U is filled with beings who carry emotional histories, moral conflicts, and internal struggles that cannot be solved with a single act of bravery. Finn begins to realize that some problems require listening, some require time, some require patience, and some cannot be fixed at all. Acceptance of this truth challenges his early expectations of heroism. It forces him to rethink what it means to help others. He learns that heroism is not measured by perfect victories, but by effort, compassion, and willingness to understand. One of the first major moments that tests Finn's acceptance of imperfection comes when he tries to help someone, but unintentionally causes harm. The weight of this experience sits heavily on him. He does not want to hurt anyone. His heart is kind. His intentions are good, but intention does not erase impact. Finn must face the discomfort of knowing he could be wrong even when he tries to be right. This realization marks a turning point. It teaches him humility. It teaches him accountability. Most of all, it teaches him that imperfection is not a flaw in his character. It is a reality he must acknowledge with honesty. Acceptance of imperfection also extends to how Finn sees other people. As a younger child, he often views others in simple terms. Villains are villains. Heroes are heroes. Friends are friends. But as he matures, he sees the emotional layers beneath these simple labels. Princess Bubblegum is brilliant and caring, yet capable of harsh decisions. Marceline is brave and witty, yet burdened by old wounds. Jake is loyal and comforting, yet imperfect in ways Finn must learn to understand with patience. Even beings that once frightened him begin to reveal softer sides. Imperfection becomes the lens through which Finn sees the world more clearly. Understanding the flaws of others helps Finn accept his own. He begins to see himself not as a symbol of perfect heroics, but as a growing person with strengths and weaknesses. He notices moments when his temper rises too quickly. He sees times when he pushes too hard. He recognizes times when he avoids difficult feelings. These observations do not make him shrink from himself. Instead, they help him develop emotional honesty. Acceptance of imperfection becomes a way for Finn to love himself more deeply, without expecting himself to be something he is not. There are moments when Finn struggles with self-criticism. He worries whether his imperfections make him less worthy, less brave, or less capable of protecting those he loves. But over time, he learns to soften these thoughts. He experiences encouragement from Jake, grounding wisdom from Marceline, and emotional guidance from BMO. Through these connections, he begins to understand that imperfection is not a barrier to connection. It is a bridge. It invites vulnerability. It invites trust. Finn accepts that his flaws do not isolate him. They make him human. Acceptance of imperfection also teaches Finn how to process regret. He experiences situations where he wishes he had acted differently. Instead of pushing these feelings away, he learns to sit with them. He acknowledges the discomfort. He reflects on the choices he made. This process teaches him emotional resilience. Regret becomes a teacher rather than a punishment. Finn accepts that regret is part of being alive. It helps him understand himself more completely. It helps him avoid repeating harmful patterns. It allows him to grow without shaming his past self. In many ways, acceptance of imperfection becomes Finn's guide when he faces heartbreak. Love gives him emotions he does not yet know how to carry. When things do not work out the way he imagined, he tries to understand what he did wrong. This introspection can be difficult. Yet, through time, he discovers that relationships are not broken by a single flaw. They are shaped by two people who are both imperfect and learning. Finn accepts that love can change, and that this change does not erase the value of past feelings. Imperfection becomes a reminder that love is real even when it does not last forever. Another important area where Finn learns acceptance is his relationship with responsibility. He wants to save everyone. He wants to fix every problem. But the world teaches him that even heroes cannot carry everything alone. He experiences moments where he pushes himself too hard, trying to take on burdens that were never meant for one person. Accepting his own limits becomes an act of maturity. It allows him to ask for help. It allows him to rest. It allows him to understand that strength is not measured by how much he takes on, but by how honestly he recognizes what he can manage. Acceptance of imperfection also influences Finn's understanding of power. As he gains strength, skills, and emotional insight, he begins to see that even power has limits. Some situations are beyond control. Some outcomes cannot be shaped by force or determination. This realization does not weaken Finn. It frees him. Acceptance allows him to approach challenges with flexibility and grace. It allows him to see that imperfection in power is not a failure of effort. It is simply part of existence. Finn's acceptance of his own imperfection ultimately helps him build healthier connections. People trust him not because he appears flawless, but because he is honest, vulnerable, and willing to grow. He listens. He apologizes when needed. He forgives without holding on to resentment. These qualities make him a pillar of emotional support in OO. People feel safe with him because he does not pretend to be perfect. He meets them with sincerity and kindness. In the end, acceptance of imperfection becomes one of the defining elements of Finn's maturity. It allows him to move through life without harsh self-judgment. It helps him see others with empathy. It gives him courage to face challenges with humility. And it teaches him that being a hero is not about perfection. It is about effort, compassion, and the willingness to try again after mistakes. Finn learns to accept himself fully, and in doing so, he becomes a hero whose strength comes not from flawless actions, but from an honest and open heart. Finn grows up believing that people fall into simple categories. Villains behave badly, heroes act bravely, friends remain loyal. Strangers either need help or pose a threat. This worldview feels natural when he is young, because it gives him certainty. It makes the world feel understandable. But as Finn explores Wu, he begins to encounter people whose inner lives do not match his early expectations. He discovers that every person carries experiences, fears, regrets, hopes, and emotional layers that cannot be seen at first glance. Acceptance of this complexity becomes one of the most important emotional lessons he ever learns. In childhood, Finn expects people to act according to a pattern. If someone hurts another person, they must be bad. If someone helps someone else, they must be good. But the world continually surprises him. He meets individuals who act out of fear, confusion, loneliness, or past wounds rather than malice. He encounters people who behave kindly while hiding deep sorrow. He interacts with beings who appear frightening but reveal a gentle nature when understood. These moments show him that identity is not fixed, it is shaped by many forces. Accepting this truth helps Finn grow into someone capable of real empathy. Princess Bubblegum becomes one of the earliest examples of complexity in Finn's life. As a child, Finn sees her as the perfect ruler. She is intelligent, caring, brave, and devoted to her people. Over time, he witnesses choices she makes that challenge his early view. She can be protective to the point of rigidity. She can hold secrets to keep others safe. She can make difficult decisions for the survival of the Candy Kingdom that do not align with Finn's sense of straightforward heroism. These moments could have confused him or pushed him away, but instead they help him understand that leadership requires sacrifices. Finn accepts that PB is neither purely shining nor deeply flawed. She is someone trying to carry responsibility the best she can. Acceptance deepens his respect for her. Marceline introduces another form of complexity. She enters Finn's life with sharp humour, unpredictable moods, and a history he does not fully understand. She acts carefree at times and deeply emotional at others. As Finn gets to know her, he begins to see the layers beneath her behaviour. She carries centuries of memories. She has experienced loss, fear, and loneliness that most beings cannot imagine. Her seemingly contradictory nature makes sense when her past is understood. Finn accepts that Marceline's emotional landscape is wide and shaped by long years of living. This acceptance strengthens their bond and teaches him that understanding someone requires time and patience. Jake also teaches Finn about complexity. Jake appears relaxed, carefree, and full of jokes, but beneath that lightness is a heart capable of deep insight. Jake's choices sometimes confuse Finn because Jake approaches problems from intuitive angles rather than logical ones. But as Finn matures, he begins to see that Jake's easy manner hides a form of quiet wisdom. Jake thinks with both his heart and instincts. He knows when to step back, when to comfort, and when to let things unfold on their own. Finn accepts that Jake's perspective is shaped by a different inner compass. This acceptance allows him to value Jake's guidance even when it does not match his own. Finn also learns to accept complexity in characters who once frightened him. Creatures like the Ice King initially seem chaotic, troublesome, and antagonistic. In childhood, Finn sees the Ice King as a villain who simply needs to be stopped. But as Finn matures, he learns the tragic truth behind the Ice King's behaviour. The crown twists Simon's mind, burying his true self beneath layers of confusion and obsession. This revelation transforms Finn's understanding of him. He begins to accept that the Ice King is not defined solely by his actions. He is also defined by the sorrow and love that shaped Simon's earlier life. This acceptance becomes a powerful moment of empathy in Finn's journey. Even beings who appear dangerous or monstrous reveal complexity once Finn learns their stories. Some creatures lash out because they fear being misunderstood. Others guard their territory because they have been hurt before. Finn realizes that fear often hides beneath anger. Sadness often hides beneath aggression. Confusion often hides beneath strange behavior. Acceptance of these truths helps Finn see beyond surfaces. It helps him approach new beings with curiosity rather than judgment. One of the most challenging lessons comes from accepting complexity in those he admires. Finn eventually understands that people he respects can still make mistakes. They can act in ways that hurt others unintentionally. They can struggle with their own emotions. They can become lost or confused. Finn learns to accept that admiration does not require perfection. It requires honesty. It requires seeing someone as they truly are, rather than as an idealized version. This acceptance allows Finn to maintain meaningful relationships without placing impossible expectations on others. Acceptance of complexity also shapes how Finn handles conflict. Instead of reacting with immediate judgment, he begins to observe the situation more carefully. He listens to the emotions behind actions. He tries to understand motives rather than assuming them. This approach prevents unnecessary fights and creates space for resolutions built on compassion. Finn develops the ability to de-escalate situations with understanding rather than force. Acceptance makes him not only a better friend, but a wiser adventurer. Finn also learns that complexity exists within the world itself. Lands that appear dangerous can hold beauty. Places that seem peaceful can hide old wounds. Magic that seems simple can carry history. These discoveries remind him that everything he encounters carries a story deeper than what he first sees. Acceptance allows him to approach the world with openness rather than assumption. Through this growing understanding, Finn sees that complexity does not weaken connections, it strengthens them. When he accepts the full truth of someone, he creates space for trust. He allows others to be seen without fear of judgment. He offers understanding where others might offer criticism. Finn learns that acceptance is one of the most powerful gifts he can give. It transforms relationships, brings peace to conflicts, and deepens emotional bonds. In time, Finn also applies this acceptance to himself. Recognizing the complexity in others helps him recognize the complexity within his own heart. He understands that he is not defined by any single trait. He is brave, but also vulnerable. He is hopeful, but also introspective. He is strong, but also sensitive. Acceptance of the complexity around him becomes acceptance of the complexity within him by Septon. Learning to accept the layers within every person he meets, Finn becomes someone who approaches life with patience, empathy, and understanding. He sees the world as a tapestry made up of countless stories, each shaped by countless experiences. This acceptance becomes part of his emotional wisdom and one of the qualities that makes him such a beloved presence in Oo. Through this, Finn learns that people are more than their actions. They are their histories, their feelings, their fears, their dreams. And accepting this truth allows him to love others fully and kindly. Finn has always carried a strong desire to help others. From the earliest days of his adventures, he steps forward with a bright heart and a belief that doing the right thing should be simple. He wants to protect people, fix problems, and bring comfort wherever he goes. But growing up teaches him a softer truth. Even with the best intentions, mistakes happen. They appear suddenly, sometimes through action, sometimes through misunderstanding, and sometimes through emotions he does not yet know how to navigate. Acceptance of his own mistakes becomes one of the most transformative lessons in Finn's emotional journey. Finn's early mistakes feel small at first. He accidentally scares someone he meant to save. He assumes he understands a situation, only to realize he misread it. These moments unsettle him because they challenge his belief that a hero should always act correctly. Finn feels the sting of embarrassment, guilt, and confusion. Yet he does not hide these feelings. He lets himself experience them fully. This openness becomes the beginning of self-acceptance. He starts to understand that being wrong is part of learning. As Finn grows older, the mistakes he makes carry more emotional weight. Some involve people he deeply cares about. Some stem from desperation. Some come from moments when his heart leads him faster than his understanding. When he feels responsible for hurting someone he wanted to protect, he faces uncomfortable emotions. Yet Finn does not turn away from these feelings. He confronts them gently. Acceptance allows him to face the truth without collapsing into shame. It becomes a quiet strength that shapes his character. One of the most important lessons Finn learns is that mistakes do not define a person. They reveal areas where growth is possible. Finn sees that acknowledging mistakes, apologizing sincerely, and trying to make things right are signs of courage. When he accepts responsibility, he shows maturity far beyond his years. This acceptance allows him to move forward without punishing himself. It becomes a tool for healing relationships and for understanding his own heart more clearly. Finn's mistakes often connect to strong emotions. When he acts while upset or confused, he sometimes misjudges a situation. These moments teach him about emotional regulation. He learns to pause before reacting. He learns to breathe, observe, and reflect. Acceptance helps him realize that emotions are natural, but choices must come from clarity. This understanding does not come overnight. It develops through many small lessons, each one guiding him toward deeper self-awareness. Finn also learns to accept that apologies matter. They must come from honesty, not obligation. When he apologizes with sincerity, he shows vulnerability and respect. He learns that an apology is not about erasing the past. It is about showing that he values the person he hurt and that he is willing to grow. This understanding deepens his relationships. It builds trust. It allows him to connect more meaningfully with people who care about him. Another part of accepting his mistakes is recognizing patterns. Finn begins to see moments where the same emotions lead him into similar trouble. Instead of ignoring these patterns, he gently examines them. He reflects on why he reacted a certain way and what he can change moving forward. This reflection helps him break cycles that might harm him or others. Acceptance gives him the patience needed to look inward without fear. Finn's acceptance also extends to mistakes that come from misunderstanding others. As he grows older and becomes more aware of emotional complexity, he realizes that caring for someone requires careful attention. When he misinterprets someone's feelings or intentions, he does not retreat into defensiveness. Instead, he listens. He asks questions. He allows himself to learn from the experience. Acceptance helps him become someone who values understanding over pride. Some of Finn's mistakes stem from his pursuit of love and connection. These moments challenge him deeply because they touch sensitive parts of his heart. When relationships shift or break, Finn reflects on the role he played. He learns to accept that love is complicated. He accepts that he can hurt someone unintentionally. He accepts that his own needs and fears can influence his actions. Through these experiences, he becomes more emotionally mature, more gentle, and more aware of how love requires understanding rather than idealization. Finn's mistakes also shape his sense of responsibility. He wants to protect everyone, yet he sometimes learns that stepping into a situation without understanding it fully can cause harm. These lessons teach him to evaluate situations with care. Acceptance helps him balance his desire to help with the wisdom to pause when needed. It allows him to take responsibility without becoming overwhelmed by guilt. A powerful moment in Finn's acceptance journey comes when he realizes that mistakes are part of being human. They do not signal failure. They show that he is alive, learning, and evolving. Instead of fearing mistakes, Finn becomes curious about them. He begins to approach missteps with compassion rather than self-criticism. He treats mistakes as opportunities to become more grounded, more loving, and more capable of emotional insight. Acceptance also strengthens his ability to forgive himself. Finn's heart is tender, and he sometimes holds on to regret longer than he needs to. Through growth, he learns to release past mistakes with kindness. He understands that forgiveness is not forgetting. It is acknowledging the truth and choosing to move forward. This ability to forgive himself becomes one of the most peaceful parts of his emotional journey. It helps him maintain inner balance even in difficult times. Finn's acceptance of his own mistakes ultimately shapes the way he interacts with the world. He becomes more patient with others because he understands that everyone makes missteps. He becomes more understanding with friends who struggle. He becomes more capable of offering support without judgment. Acceptance transforms him into someone who can hold space for both his own flaws and the flaws of others. This emotional openness becomes one of the reasons he forms deep and lasting bonds throughout OO. In the end, Finn's acceptance of his own mistakes reveals the quiet wisdom he develops as he matures. He learns to see mistakes as part of the path, not as obstacles blocking it. He becomes someone who grows through reflection, honesty, and compassion. Acceptance teaches him humility, strengthens his relationships, and deepens his understanding of himself. Through his mistakes, Finn becomes not just a hero, but a young man who carries emotional insight that helps him move forward with clarity and peace. Love begins for Finn as something bright and simple. In his early years, he sees love as admiration, excitement, affection, and the desire to share moments with someone he cares for. It feels light and pure, without confusion or heaviness. But as he grows older, love becomes one of the most complex emotional experiences in his life. It teaches him joy and disappointment. It shows him connection and distance. It reveals hope, longing, understanding, and sometimes heartbreak. Through each shift, acceptance becomes the quiet force that helps him understand love's changing nature. In childhood, Finn sees Princess Bubblegum as the perfect embodiment of love. She is wise, kind, strong, and steady. His feelings for her feel natural because she represents everything he admires. Yet, as he grows older, he starts to understand that love cannot be based solely on admiration. Love must fit into the lives of two people who are growing in different directions. The gap in their ages matters when maturity widens it further. Princess Bubblegum's life is filled with responsibilities that stretch beyond simple companionship. Finn realizes that she cares for him deeply, but in a way that does not match the romantic shape he imagined. Accepting this truth is painful for him, yet it helps him grow. It teaches him that love does not always mean being together. Sometimes love means appreciating someone for who they are, even when paths separate. This acceptance opens the door to a deeper form of understanding, Finn begins to recognize that love is not an achievement or a goal. It is a relationship shaped by timing, emotional readiness, and compatibility. His feelings for PB do not disappear. They change. They soften. They settle into a respectful closeness that becomes steadier than his earlier hopes. Through this transition, Finn learns one of the hardest lessons in life. Love does not always align with desire. Acceptance becomes the bridge that carries him from longing toward peace. When Finn later develops feelings for Flame Princess, he enters a new phase of emotional growth. This relationship is different. It is passionate, intense, warm, and sometimes overwhelming. Flame Princess is strong and independent. She carries her own struggles with identity, control, and emotion. Their connection challenges Finn to consider another person's inner world more carefully. He learns that love requires patience and sensitivity. He learns that feelings must be balanced with respect for someone's boundaries. This relationship teaches him that love can be powerful, but power does not always lead to stability. The challenges Finn faces with Flame Princess reveal new layers of acceptance. They both care for each other, yet they sometimes push too hard, misunderstand one another, or react with emotions that outpace clarity. Finn realizes that love can cause hurt even without intent. Their relationship teaches him about emotional vulnerability, responsibility, and the need to listen with genuine presence. When their connection eventually shifts into something gentler and less romantic, Finn feels the sting of loss. Yet he accepts that their separation is not a failure. It is a natural change born from two people growing differently. This acceptance becomes a mark of maturity. Finn's experiences with love also teach him about emotional independence. In his younger years, he sometimes ties his sense of happiness to the attention or affection he receives from others. As he grows older, he learns to find stability within himself. Love becomes something he shares, not something he needs in order to feel whole. Acceptance allows him to understand that self-worth cannot come from someone else's feelings. It must come from his own sense of identity and purpose. Another significant part of Finn's journey is learning to accept uncertainty in love. Emotions shift, people change, connections fade or transform. Finn's heart remains open. Yet he becomes wiser about the unpredictable nature of affection. He learns to appreciate love when it is present and to release it gently when it moves in a new direction. This emotional flexibility makes him more resilient. It helps him approach future connections with patience and openness rather than fear or longing. His friendships also contribute to his understanding of love. Jake teaches him the importance of comfort, humour, and shared experience. Marceline teaches him the depth of emotional connection that evolves gradually through trust. BMO teaches him the joy of simple companionship. These friendships show Finn that love is not limited to romance. It exists in bonds shaped by loyalty, support, and presence. Acceptance of these different forms of love expands his understanding of what love means. At times, Finn wonders why love changes at all. He remembers moments filled with clarity and warmth, only to watch them shift into something quieter. But as he grows, he realizes that change is part of love's nature. People grow, circumstances shift, and emotional landscapes reshape themselves. Acceptance helps him understand that love is never wasted, even when it changes form. Every connection leaves an imprint. Every experience adds to his emotional wisdom. Love does not vanish, it transforms. Finn also learns to accept the emotional truths within himself. He acknowledges his desires without letting them control him. He acknowledges his sadness without letting it consume him. He acknowledges his hope without forcing it onto others. Acceptance becomes a way for him to care for his own heart gently. It becomes the inner voice that tells him he is allowed to feel deeply and still stand steady. Through all these experiences, Finn becomes more grounded in the idea that love is not something he must chase. It is something he meets naturally through sincerity, kindness, and openness. Love becomes less of a dream and more of a shared journey. Acceptance allows him to enter relationships with maturity and to leave them with peace. It becomes the quiet guide that helps him move from one stage of his emotional life to the next without losing himself. In the end, acceptance of changing love shapes Finn into someone who does not fear emotional growth. He understands that every experience adds to his heart. He recognizes that love remains meaningful even when it changes direction. And he embraces the truth that love's evolution is part of the beauty of being alive. Acceptance helps him see love not as something fragile, but as something adaptable, deep, and ever-growing. Friendship is one of the first sources of meaning in Finn's life. Before he understands duty, destiny, love, or heartbreak, he understands companionship. He understands the simple pleasure of sitting beside someone who makes him feel safe. He understands the warmth of shared laughter, shared adventure, and shared silence. Yet, as he grows older, Finn learns that friendships evolve just as he does. They change shape, tone, and rhythm. Acceptance of this evolution becomes another essential part of his emotional journey. Jake is the first friend Finn ever knows, and their friendship becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Jake is his brother, his guide, his partner, and his comfort. In childhood, their bond feels effortless. They live side by side, play side by side, and run into danger without a second thought. Everything they do carries a sense of togetherness. Finn depends on Jake's presence, the way a tree depends on sunlight. But as Finn grows, he begins to see that friendship must adapt. Jake develops his own responsibilities, his own family, his own inner world. He still loves Finn deeply, but he cannot always be at his side. This shift unsettles Finn at first. He feels the quiet ache of separation, not because Jake leaves him behind, but because life expands for both of them. Over time, Finn learns to accept that love within friendship does not fade when circumstances change. It simply finds new shapes. Their bond matures into something less constant but more rooted, something that remains steady even when life pulls them into different directions. Marceline becomes another important presence in Finn's life. Their friendship forms slowly, built from shared experiences rather than immediate closeness. Marceline is older, wiser, and emotionally layered in ways Finn does not always understand. Yet she sees something in him that she admires. She sees sincerity, courage, and a heart capable of deep feeling. Through years of quiet moments, music, stories, and emotional honesty, their friendship deepens. Marceline is not always available, nor does she always want company. She values solitude because it helps her manage memories that span centuries. Acceptance teaches Finn that friendship does not require constant closeness. It asks for understanding. It asks for trust in the bond, even when silence stretches between them. Finn learns to accept that Marceline's presence is like the moon, sometimes bright, sometimes distant, always steady in its way. Princess Bubblegum's friendship with Finn changes even more dramatically. Their early dynamic is coloured by affection and admiration, but also by distance and difference. As Finn grows older, their relationship becomes more balanced. They speak as equals more often. They trust one another with emotional truths that would have been too complicated for childhood. Bubblegum opens up to Finn in small but meaningful ways, trusting him with layers of her personality that she once kept hidden. Their friendship evolves from idealization into mutual understanding. Acceptance allows Finn to see PB clearly, not as a symbol of perfection, but as a complex person with her own hopes and vulnerabilities. BMO becomes another constant in Finn's emotional world. At first, BMO acts like a playmate, someone who brings joy and imagination into the treehouse. But as Finn matures, he begins to see the subtle wisdom BMO carries. BMO's optimism, creative thinking, and philosophical nature become sources of comfort for Finn during moments of confusion or loneliness. Their friendship deepens through conversations that reveal BMO's unique way of understanding life. Acceptance teaches Finn that friendship is not measured by age, species, or logic. It is measured by connection and sincerity. Finn also forms bonds with people he never expected to grow close to. Huntress Wizard enters his life with a mixture of mystery and honesty. Their interactions challenge him to explore his Brodus, inner thoughts without fear. He accepts that some friendships appear suddenly and powerfully, even if they do not last forever. Each connection has value. Each teaches him something new about himself. Another significant lesson comes from friendships that shift unexpectedly. Some characters drift out of Finn's life as their own stories take them elsewhere. Others return after long absences. Finn learns to accept that friendship is not a fixed pattern. It flows like a river, sometimes running parallel, sometimes branching into new paths, sometimes returning in ways he could not have predicted. Acceptance softens the sadness of distance and heightens the joy of reuniting. Finn also learns to accept that he himself changes within friendships. He becomes more thoughtful, more patient, and more aware of emotional boundaries. This growth influences the way he interacts with others. He communicates more openly. He listens more carefully. He recognizes when someone needs space. Acceptance helps him evolve from a friend who relies on closeness to a friend who understands the value of giving others room to grow. The evolution of Finn's friendships teaches him about the seasons of life. In childhood, friendships feel simple and immediate. In adolescence, they become gateways into deeper emotional understanding. In early adulthood, they become reflections of personal growth, trust, and shared history. Acceptance allows Finn to embrace each phase without clinging to the past or fearing the future. At times, Finn feels the nostalgia that comes with remembering the early days of his life with Jake. He recalls the treehouse filled with laughter, the endless adventures, and the feeling that nothing would ever change. Acceptance teaches him that those memories remain meaningful even as life expands. They do not disappear. They simply become part of the foundation on which new experiences are built. Friendship also reveals to Finn the importance of emotional resilience. When misunderstandings arise or conflicts flare, he learns to approach them with patience rather than impulsiveness. Acceptance helps him understand that disagreements do not break friendships unless one refuses to grow. Finn becomes capable of repairing bonds, offering apologies, and receiving them with a calm heart. Ultimately, acceptance of friendship evolving transforms Finn into a person who can love without clinging, support without smothering, and understand without demanding. He becomes someone who values presence, silence, distance, and closeness as equal parts of meaningful relationships. This acceptance deepens his emotional maturity and prepares him for the next stages of his life. Through this journey, Finn learns that friendship does not weaken when it changes. It grows. It becomes richer, more nuanced, and more resilient. Accepting this truth allows him to carry love for his friends through every transformation, trusting that the bonds formed through sincerity and kindness will always find their way back to warmth. Responsibility enters Finn's life in many shapes. At first, it looks simple and heroic. Someone calls for help, and he answers. A village faces danger, and he steps forward. His early understanding of responsibility comes from a place of excitement, bravery, and youthful optimism. But as Finn grows older, responsibility becomes more layered, more emotional, and more complex. It becomes something he must hold with care, rather than rush toward with instinct. Acceptance of responsibility becomes one of the most defining elements of his path into maturity. When Finn is young, responsibility feels like a natural extension of his desire to help others. He sees someone in trouble and feels compelled to act. He feels proud when he succeeds and determined when he fails. These simple moments teach him the foundations of duty, but they do not yet reveal its deeper weight. As he matures, he discovers that responsibility is not always heroic. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is painful. Sometimes it requires making choices he wishes he did not have to make. Finn learns early that responsibility often involves the well-being of others. He becomes aware that his actions can influence people's lives in ways he cannot always predict. This realization humbles him. He begins to approach tasks not just with courage, but with thoughtfulness. Acceptance allows him to understand that responsibility is not about being perfect. It is about caring deeply, acting with intention, and learning from every experience. A major part of Finn's responsibility comes from his role in Oo's safety. As one of the few humans in a magical world, his desire to protect others makes him stand out. People trust him, they rely on him. Finn accepts this trust with gratitude, but also with awareness. He begins to see that real responsibility is not about being celebrated. It is about showing up even when no one is watching. It is about doing what is right, even when it is difficult. Finn's understanding of responsibility deepens when he realizes that he cannot save everyone. At first, this realization feels heavy. He tries to spread himself thin, running from one problem to another, hoping that effort alone will be enough. But he soon discovers that responsibility requires balance. He cannot give endlessly without resting. He cannot protect others if he ignores his own emotions. Acceptance teaches him that responsibility must be shared. It cannot rest on one person's shoulders forever. Jake becomes a powerful influence in this lesson. Jake's approach to life, while relaxed, carries its own quiet wisdom. He teaches Finn that responsibility does not always require tension or urgency. It requires understanding the right moments to act and the right moments to wait. Finn learns that being responsible also means trusting others to play their part. He accepts that he does not need to carry every burden alone. Princess Bubblegum also shapes Finn's understanding of responsibility. Through her leadership, he witnesses how difficult decisions often involve emotional cost. PB must protect the Candy Kingdom, even when those choices weigh heavily on her. Finn sees her struggle, her dedication, and her occasional loneliness. This helps him understand that responsibility is not about looking strong. It is about being willing to make sacrifices for the well-being of others. Acceptance helps him see that responsibility demands empathy, not just bravery. Another part of Finn's acceptance journey comes from realizing that responsibility can be emotional, not just practical. Being a supportive friend requires patience, listening, and understanding. Being present for Jake, Marceline, BMO, or others means offering comfort during difficult moments. These emotional responsibilities help Finn grow more compassionate. He accepts that caring for others is not limited to action. It also involves being emotionally available. Finn also encounters responsibility tied to his own mistakes. When his actions unintentionally hurt someone, he feels a strong sense of guilt. Yet he learns to accept that responsibility includes acknowledging harm, apologizing sincerely, and working to make things right. This approach teaches him that taking responsibility is not about punishment. It is about growth. It is about showing others that he values their feelings and their trust. As he matures, Finn begins to recognize that responsibility extends to his inner world as well. He must care for his own emotional health. He must reflect on his past choices. He must understand his own boundaries. Accepting responsibility for himself allows him to become more grounded, stable, and thoughtful. It helps him grow into someone who can hold responsibility for others without losing sight of his own well-being. There are moments in Finn's life when he faces responsibilities that feel overwhelming. He encounters situations shaped by forces far beyond his control. Cosmic beings, ancient histories, and deep magic sometimes place him at the center of struggles he does not fully understand. In those moments, Finn learns that responsibility does not require complete understanding. It requires presence. It requires sincerity. It requires doing the best he can with the knowledge he has. Acceptance helps him remain steady even when the world feels bigger than he is. Finn's acceptance of responsibility also evolves when he meets his own family roots. Learning about his biological father introduces new complications. Finn must decide what responsibility, if any, he owes to someone who did not raise him. Through this emotional challenge, he understands that responsibility in relationships must be chosen, not forced. He accepts that not every bond must be carried. Some can be released without guilt. In his later years, Finn's understanding of responsibility becomes balanced and wise. He no longer sees responsibility as a test or a burden. He sees it as a part of life. He approaches challenges calmly. He supports others without taking on more than he can handle. He accepts that responsibility is not about proving himself. It is about living with integrity and kindness. Through this acceptance, Finn learns that responsibility is not a weight meant to crush him. It is a way of expressing love, loyalty, and care. It is a reflection of how deeply he values the world and the people in it. Acceptance allows him to carry responsibility with grace rather than strain. It becomes another part of the gentle strength that defines him. Finn grows up imagining that strength is something clear and simple. In his earliest adventures, he believes that power comes from courage, skill, and the ability to fight for what is right. Power feels like a tool he can hold tightly. It feels like a choice he can make. But as he matures, he begins to understand that power is not only physical or heroic. It has emotional, moral, and spiritual weight. It shifts, changes, and sometimes slips away no matter how bravely he stands. Acceptance of both power and powerlessness becomes one of the most important lessons of his life. In his childhood, Finn believes that if he tries hard enough, he can fix anything. He leaps into danger with the faith that determination alone will guide him to victory. This belief carries him through many early challenges. His strength grows, his reflexes sharpen. His confidence remains bright. Yet as he faces more complicated situations, he starts to see that some things cannot be changed by effort alone. Some problems do not respond to force or bravery. Some outcomes cannot be shaped by a single person, no matter how determined they are. Finn's first encounters with cosmic beings introduce him to a level of power he cannot fully grasp. Creatures like the Lich operate on a scale far beyond simple combat. Their influence touches ancient magic, deep time, and the fabric of existence. Finn's determination remains strong, but he cannot stop such beings through physical means alone. These encounters teach him humility. He accepts that the world contains forces that exceed his reach. This does not diminish his courage. Instead, it gives his courage a wiser shape. He learns to face overwhelming situations without expecting total control. Another important moment comes from Finn's interactions with Princess Bubblegum. She is brilliant and resourceful, yet she holds responsibilities that sometimes push her into morally complex decisions. Finn sees that power is not always glamorous. It can be heavy. It can isolate. It can force choices no one wants to make. This helps Finn understand that power carries consequences. Acceptance allows him to see that authority requires emotional resilience, not just strength. It also teaches him to respect the quiet burdens that leaders carry. Finn experiences powerlessness most intensely through emotional struggles. Physical danger feels manageable to him. Emotional challenges do not. When he faces heartbreak, loneliness, or confusion, he cannot punch the feeling away. He cannot solve it with a sword. He cannot outrun it. Acceptance becomes necessary. He learns that emotional pain is part of being human. It teaches him depth, sensitivity, and self-awareness. Accepting that he cannot control the outcomes of relationships or feelings helps him grow into someone who approaches emotional life with compassion rather than fear. Finn's maturation also teaches him that power changes shape over time. As a child, his strength lies in bravery and physical ability. As he matures, his greatest power becomes emotional insight. He learns to comfort others. He learns to listen. He learns to see beneath anger and sadness. This emotional power becomes one of his most valuable traits. Acceptance helps him understand that power is not only measured in victories, it is measured in the ability to offer peace and understanding. Another layer of acceptance comes from moments when Finn must ask for help. Early in life, he tries to handle everything on his own. He does not want to burden others, but he learns that true strength includes vulnerability. When he accepts help from Jake, Marceline, PB, or BMO, he grows closer to them. He learns that shared responsibility does not weaken him. It strengthens everyone involved. Acceptance teaches him that needing others is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of connection. Finn also faces situations where his choices do not lead to the results he intended. He tries to make things better, only to discover that circumstances spiral in unexpected directions. These moments could make him feel helpless. Instead, acceptance helps him understand that life is not a straight path. Powerlessness does not mean failure. It means that he must be adaptable. He learns to meet each moment with flexibility rather than force. When Finn encounters his biological father, he faces a different kind of powerlessness. He cannot change who his father is. He cannot control the choices that man makes. He cannot shape the relationship into what he wishes it could be. Accepting this truth is painful, yet necessary. It frees him from the need to prove something. It allows him to release hopes that would only lead to disappointment. Acceptance becomes the doorway to peace. Finn's experiences with alternate timelines also deepen his understanding of power and powerlessness. He sees versions of himself shaped by different choices and circumstances. He encounters worlds where small changes lead to entirely different lives. These experiences remind him that even the strongest person cannot control everything. They also show him that each version of himself carries value. Acceptance helps him appreciate the complexity of existence without becoming overwhelmed by it. Over time, Finn's understanding of power becomes balanced and nuanced. He recognizes that true power is not about domination. It is about presence. It is about compassion. It is about accepting what can be changed and releasing what cannot. Power becomes the ability to stand with love even in moments of uncertainty. Powerlessness becomes the space where growth occurs. Finn learns to embrace both. He accepts the strength in his body, the strength in his heart, and the times when no strength can alter the outcome. This acceptance turns him into someone grounded, someone peaceful, someone capable of facing even the greatest challenges without losing his sense of self. In the end, acceptance of power and powerlessness allows Finn to move through life with clarity. He understands that he does not need to control everything to make a difference. He understands that vulnerability is a form of strength. He understands that the world is vast and that his place within it is meaningful even when the path is unpredictable. Acceptance becomes the quiet foundation that supports him through every transformation, guiding him with gentle honesty toward maturity. Family is one of the most delicate parts of Finn's life. It is where his story begins, even though he remembers almost none of it. It is where he finds comfort, even when the bonds are unusual. It is where he faces some of his deepest emotional challenges, and it is where he learns that family is far more than where someone comes from. It is who chooses them, who supports them, who raises them, and who stands beside them through every change. Acceptance of family truths becomes a gentle thread that guides Finn through many phases of his life. When Finn is very young, his understanding of family is simple. Joshua and Margaret care for him, protect him, and teach him how to navigate a world filled with strange magic and unpredictable creatures. Jake becomes his closest companion, not because they share blood, but because they share experience. Their home becomes the source of everything stable and warm. Finn does not question these bonds. He accepts them completely because they feel natural and loving. In these early days, family is defined by presence, not origin. As Finn grows older, questions about his origins begin to surface quietly. He knows he was found as a baby, left on a leaf in the woods. This truth creates small ripples of curiosity. Where did he come from? Why was he alone? Who was meant to care for him before Joshua and Margaret appeared? These questions do not hurt him, but they linger. He carries them gently, like puzzle pieces that do not yet have a place. Acceptance helps him hold these unanswered questions without fear. Finn does not let them define him. He trusts the family he grew up with more than the mystery he did not experience. This trust gives him emotional security that will later help him face more difficult family revelations. One of the first deeper truths Finn must accept is that family is imperfect. He sees this clearly through Jake. Jake is loving, protective, and full of warmth, but he also carries his own inner conflicts and misunderstandings. Jake sometimes avoids uncomfortable subjects. He sometimes makes decisions that confuse Finn. Yet through each uncertainty, their bond remains strong. Finn learns to accept that family members can be flawed while still being dependable. Acceptance becomes the foundation that keeps their relationship steady. As Finn matures, He also learns more about Jake's origins. Discovering Jake's connection to an otherworldly being adds complexity to their bond. Finn realizes that family can hold secrets even when love remains sincere. He accepts that knowing everything about someone is not required to care for them fully. This understanding deepens his loyalty to Jake rather than weakening it. Acceptance teaches him that family stories can be complicated without breaking the bond between them. Another major moment in Finn's journey comes when he discovers the truth about his biological father. For years, he imagines what kind of person his father might be. He wonders whether he might find answers, connection, or closure. When he finally meets him, the reality is not what he hoped for. The man he meets is distant, self-centered, and emotionally unavailable. Finn feels confusion, disappointment, and sadness. He must face the truth that biological connection does not guarantee emotional connection. This is one of the hardest truths Finn must accept. It challenges his early belief that family is something defined by natural ties. Acceptance helps him understand that family must be chosen, not assumed. It allows him to release expectations that would only cause him pain. It helps him stand strong in the love he already has, rather than chasing something that does not exist in the form he imagined. Finn also learns that family is shaped by many types of bonds. Marceline becomes a quiet sister figure. Her support comes in the form of music, honesty, and emotional openness. BMO becomes a childlike sibling who fills the home with imagination and comfort. Princess Bubblegum, though not part of his household, becomes someone he trusts deeply, someone he depends on emotionally, and someone who guides him through complicated moments with calm wisdom. These relationships create a chosen family that supports Finn in ways his origins never could. Acceptance teaches Finn that family grows naturally from shared life and mutual care. It is not fixed. It evolves with each new connection. He learns to value emotional closeness more than biological definition. This shift gives him emotional freedom. He understands that he can love his adoptive family without feeling obligated to force a relationship with his biological father. Acceptance helps him create healthy boundaries that protect his heart. Finn also faces family truths through his relationship with Jermaine. Jermaine carries responsibilities that Finn and Jake do not fully understand at first. His dedication to maintaining their childhood home reveals a weight he carries quietly. Finn must accept that Jermaine expresses care differently than Jake. He must accept that love can appear in forms that look serious, quiet, or solitary. This acceptance deepens Finn's understanding of family complexity. It shows him that care exists even when it is not expressed through adventure or humour. Another important layer of acceptance comes from Finn's realization that he can form his own family in the future. He sees people around him growing, creating relationships, and building homes. This possibility does not frighten him. It comforts him. Acceptance allows him to imagine a future where he carries the lessons of his childhood into the lives of others. It shows him that family is something that continues through compassion rather than obligation. Through all these experiences, Finn learns that family is a living, breathing connection. It grows, changes, and sometimes surprises him. It can bring joy, it can bring pain. Yet, acceptance helps him see the beauty in every part of it. He learns to hold love without clinging, to navigate disappointment without breaking, and to honour the people who shaped him without expecting more from them than they can give. In the end, acceptance of family truths allows Finn to stand firmly in who he is. He does not define himself by loss or uncertainty. He defines himself by the love he gives and the love he receives. By accepting that family is both complicated and precious, Finn becomes someone who approaches all relationships with honesty, gentleness, and emotional clarity. Suffering arrives in Finn's life long before he has the words to describe it. It comes from his earliest abandonment, from fears he cannot name, and from emotions that swell without warning. As he grows older, suffering appears in more complex forms. He faces heartbreak, disappointment, confusion, loneliness, and the painful realization that not every problem can be solved with strength or determination. Each time he encounters suffering, Finn learns something new about healing. Acceptance of both suffering and healing becomes one of the most profound emotional lessons shaping his adulthood. In his early childhood, Finn experiences fear in a simple way. Loud noises startle him. Strange creatures worry him. Separation from loved ones fills him with nervousness. But these fears fade quickly, soothed by Joshua, Margaret, and Jake. At this stage, suffering feels temporary, like a passing storm. Healing comes automatically through love and presence. As Finn matures, he begins to understand that suffering does not always disappear so easily. Some feelings linger, some wounds cannot be fixed by reassurance alone. One of the first deeper forms of suffering Finn experiences is heartbreak. His feelings for Princess Bubblegum shift from innocent affection to something more complicated. When he realizes that his hopes for a romantic bond will not unfold the way he imagined, he feels a heavy sadness. He tries to hide the hurt at first, believing that a hero should stay strong. But over time, he accepts that sadness is part of caring deeply. Instead of turning away from the pain, he lets himself feel it. This acceptance becomes the first step toward healing. Suffering returns in different forms when his relationship with Flame Princess changes. Their connection brings intense emotion, warmth, and excitement, but also conflict and misunderstanding. When their relationship reaches a point where it can no longer continue, Finn once again faces loss. This loss touches a deeper part of him. He feels guilt, confusion, and longing. Yet he also recognizes that both he and Flame Princess deserve space to grow in ways that were not possible together. Accepting this truth helps him move toward healing without resentment. Healing for Finn is rarely instant. It comes through reflection, honesty, and the support of those around him. Jake offers gentle humour that softens Finn's sadness. BMO provides warmth and optimism. Marceline offers quiet companionship that makes emotional weight easier to carry. Finn realizes that healing happens not through avoidance, but through connection. Acceptance of suffering allows him to reach out rather than withdraw. It allows him to trust that others can help him find balance. Finn also experiences suffering through moments when he feels powerless to help someone he cares about. Seeing the Ice King's mind unravel brings confusion and sorrow. Finn feels torn between frustration and compassion. He wants to help Simon, yet he cannot heal the crown's damage or reverse the passage of time. Acceptance becomes essential here. Finn learns that suffering is sometimes tied to circumstances beyond control. This acceptance does not lessen his empathy, it deepens it. By acknowledging that he cannot fix everything, he becomes more present and tender. Another source of suffering comes from Finn's attempts to understand his place in the world. At times he feels isolated as one of the last humans. He wonders whether he is meant to follow a specific destiny. He questions his worth. These internal doubts create quiet suffering that cannot be seen from the outside. Healing from this requires patience. Finn gradually accepts that identity does not need to be built on certainty. It can be built on experiences, emotions, and choices. This acceptance helps dissolve the loneliness that once clouded his heart. Finn also faces suffering connected to his mistakes. When he unintentionally hurts others, the regret weighs heavily on him. Instead of drowning in guilt, he learns to process his actions with honesty. Apologizing, listening, and growing become part of his healing. He accepts that suffering caused by mistakes can guide him toward becoming a kinder, wiser person. This acceptance transforms suffering into something meaningful rather than destructive. Physical suffering also plays a role in Finn's journey. Adventures bring injuries, exhaustion, and pain. Early on, he treats physical wounds as badges of heroism, but with time, he learns to respect his limits. Healing physically becomes tied to healing emotionally. Rest, patience, and gentleness become part of his self-care. Acceptance helps him approach physical pain not with pride, but with understanding. A profound lesson in suffering arises through Finn's connection to alternate versions of himself. Meeting other Finns, seeing different paths his life could have taken, and witnessing tragedies that did not happen to him opens a new layer of awareness. He realizes that suffering is universal. Every life carries sorrow, regardless of timeline. This realization brings both sadness and comfort. Acceptance helps him see that suffering does not single him out. It connects him to all beings who struggle and grow. Healing for Finn often arrives through nature. Quiet walks, peaceful nights under the stars, and moments of stillness help him process what he cannot fully explain. He discovers that healing does not always require understanding the cause of suffering. Sometimes it requires accepting the feeling itself. Nature gives him space to breathe, reflect, and settle his emotions without judgment. Finn also learns that healing is not linear. Some days he feels balanced and strong. Other days, old sadness resurfaces. Acceptance teaches him that healing does not erase suffering. It helps him carry it with more grace. He begins to approach emotional wounds the same way he approaches cuts and bruises. They need time. They need care. They need patience. One of the hardest forms of suffering Finn must accept comes from the changing world around him. As he grows older, he sees the land shift. He sees friends evolve. He sees relationships transform. Change brings both beauty and loss. Finn learns to accept that suffering sometimes comes from wanting things to stay the same. Healing comes when he embraces change instead of resisting it. This acceptance becomes a source of peace. Through all of this, Finn discovers that healing is a quiet form of strength. It is not dramatic or sudden. It is gentle, persistent, and rooted in self-compassion. By accepting suffering instead of denying it, Finn becomes someone who can hold both joy and sorrow without losing himself. He grows emotionally balanced. He becomes more empathetic toward others who suffer. He understands that life contains both pain and recovery, and that both are essential. In the end, acceptance of suffering and healing helps Finn move through life with resilience. He becomes someone who feels deeply, recovers slowly, and grows steadily. He accepts that being human means carrying scars, yet he also learns that scars can become reminders of survival, growth, and transformation. Through acceptance, he turns suffering into wisdom and healing into a quiet, enduring strength. Identity begins as a simple question for Finn. As a young boy, he thinks of himself as an adventurer. He swings a sword, saves people, and lives with the unshakable belief that heroes understand who they are without much doubt. But as he grows older, Finn realizes that identity is not fixed, it is fluid. It changes through experience, emotion, connection, and self-reflection. Acceptance of his own identity becomes one of the most meaningful steps in his journey toward emotional maturity. In his childhood, Finn defines himself through action. He is someone who helps others. He is someone who goes on quests. He is someone who lives with Jake and protects the innocent. These early definitions feel clear because they come from the life he knows. He does not yet question where he fits in the larger world. He does not wonder why he is one of the last humans or what that means for his purpose. Identity, at this stage, feels simple because he has not yet experienced the inner shifts that come with growing older. Those shifts begin quietly. Finn notices changes in his thoughts, his emotions, and his relationships. He starts to question why he feels drawn to certain people. He wonders why sadness follows him in moments that once would have been joyful. He feels pride in protecting others, yet he also senses a deeper longing for understanding. These changes lead him towards self-reflection. He begins to examine who he is beneath the role of adventurer. One of the earliest challenges Finn faces is accepting that identity does not have to be heroic all the time. He once believed that his worth came from saving others. But as he matures, he learns that identity includes rest, failure, curiosity, confusion, and vulnerability. This realization teaches him to see himself as a whole person, rather than a single purpose. Acceptance of the quieter parts of himself helps him discover a deeper sense of self. Being one of the last humans adds another layer to Finn's search for identity. Early on, he accepts this fact without much emotional weight. But as he grows older, he begins to feel the strangeness of it. He wonders what humans were like before him. He wonders whether he is meant to carry their memory. He questions whether his species defines him. The lack of answers creates a tension within him. Acceptance allows him to understand that identity does not come from species alone. It comes from emotional truth, compassion, choices, and relationships. Being human becomes part of him, but it does not limit him. When Finn eventually meets other humans, his identity becomes even more complex. He sees people who have survived through a harsh environment, shaped by experiences completely different from his own. This meeting does not give him a sense of completion. Instead, it shows him that identity grows from lived experience rather than from origin. He accepts that he is shaped by Oo, by Jake, by Marceline, by BMO, by PB, and by everything he has lived through. Human identity becomes something flexible rather than something tied to a single group. Another important part of Finn's identity is his emotional nature. He grows up wanting to be strong, but he gradually learns that strength includes sensitivity, empathy, and self-awareness. He accepts that his heart is not a weakness. It guides him. It deepens his understanding of others. It connects him to people in ways physical power cannot. Acceptance of his emotional depth becomes one of the most powerful parts of his identity. Finn also explores identity through creativity. Music with Marceline helps him express emotions he cannot describe. Quiet moments with BMO give him space to imagine, dream, and reflect. These experiences teach him that identity includes creative expression. He begins to see himself not only as a fighter, but as someone capable of exploring feelings through art and reflection. Acceptance of this softer dimension enriches the way he views himself. Another area where Finn's identity grows is through independence. In his early years, his identity is strongly connected to Jake. They act as a pair, think as a pair, and feel as a pair. But as Finn matures, he realizes that he must learn to define himself as an individual. This does not weaken their bond, it strengthens it. Acceptance helps Finn step into adulthood with confidence. He realizes that identity can include both companionship and independence. He can grow without losing the people he loves. Finn also confronts identity through his mistakes. When he makes choices that cause harm or confusion, he feels the tension between who he wants to be and who he is in those moments. Acceptance teaches him that identity includes imperfection. It includes the ability to grow from mistakes rather than hide from them. His identity becomes more resilient as he accepts both his strengths and his flaws. Another profound shift occurs when Finn begins to question his role. Being a hero once defined his entire identity. But as he grows older, he understands that identity can evolve beyond a single label. He can be peaceful, he can be thoughtful, he can be nurturing, he can be reflective. He learns that identity does not have to be tied to constant action. Acceptance gives him the freedom to change his path without feeling like he is abandoning who he is. Moments with alternate versions of himself deepen his understanding. When Finn sees worlds shaped by different choices, he realizes that identity is shaped by environment and experience. Every version of Finn carries something true, yet none of them alone define him. Acceptance helps him appreciate his uniqueness without feeling trapped by possibility. He learns that identity is not a fixed target. It is a journey. Spiritual and cosmic encounters also influence Finn's sense of self. When he faces beings far older and more powerful than he is, he sees himself as small within the vastness of existence. Yet he also sees that smallness does not diminish his value. Acceptance helps him understand that identity can coexist with cosmic mystery. He does not need a grand destiny to be meaningful. Who he is comes from the choices he makes each day. In the end, acceptance of identity becomes Finn's quiet liberation. He no longer needs to force himself into a single shape. He accepts his past without letting it define him. He accepts his emotions without fearing them. He accepts his changing relationships without resisting their evolution. He accepts that identity is something he will spend his whole life discovering. This acceptance gives him peace. It helps him stand calmly in the present. It helps him approach the future with curiosity instead of fear, and it helps him love himself softly, without conditions or expectations. Through acceptance of identity, Finn becomes someone who understands that being human means continually becoming. It means listening to the heart, embracing change, and growing through every experience. Fate enters Finn's life as a distant idea at first. In childhood, he does not consider destiny or cosmic purpose. He explores the world with Jake, helps those in need, and sees each day as a new adventure waiting to unfold. But as he matures, Finn begins to encounter forces that stretch beyond simple cause and effect. He meets beings who predict futures, creatures tied to ancient cycles, and versions of himself shaped by choices he never made. These experiences bring him face to face with questions about destiny, purpose, and the paths he might take. Acceptance of both fate and choice becomes a profound part of his emotional growth. Finn's earliest sense of fate comes from the realization that he might be one of the last humans in Oo. This fact gives his life a strange weight. He wonders whether he is meant to carry something forward or protect something lost. For a time, he imagines that being human might come with a hidden purpose. But as he grows, he learns that identity, destiny are not the same. He accepts that being human influences him, but it does not determine the course of his life. This acceptance becomes the foundation for understanding that fate is not always a map. Sometimes it is simply a circumstance. Finn's encounters with the multiverse add a deeper layer. When he meets alternate versions of himself, he sees lives that diverged from his own because of small or large decisions. Some timelines show him peaceful futures, others show hardship. One version must carry great burdens, while another finds calm beyond struggle. These experiences reshape Finn's understanding of fate. He realizes that destiny is not predetermined. It branches, it shifts, it adapts. Every choice influences it. Acceptance helps him understand that he holds more agency than he once believed. Yet he also sees that choice has limits. Certain events unfold regardless of his desires. Ancient powers move through the world with their own momentum. Some outcomes cannot be prevented, no matter how hard he tries. Accepting this reality is not easy. Finn has always wanted to help everyone, to stop every danger, to fix every broken thing. Facing situations where his efforts cannot change the result challenges him deeply. But acceptance teaches him that release can be as important as action. It teaches him that wisdom comes from knowing when to intervene and when to step back. The Lich provides one of Finn's clearest lessons in the tension between fate and choice. The Lich feels inevitable, like a force written into the world's history. Yet every time Finn confronts him, choice becomes the tool that shifts the balance. Finn's actions change outcomes that once seemed set. This teaches him that even when fate looms large, it is not absolute. Acceptance helps him understand that the world contains both fixed patterns and open paths, and that he moves within both. Another lesson comes from his connection to the grass sword and the arm that follows. This bond appears to come from destiny, tied to ancient magic beyond his control. But the way Finn responds to that transformation showcases the power of choice. He navigates the emotional turmoil with resilience. He lets others help him. He allows himself to grow instead of being defined by what happened. Acceptance teaches him that the meaning of an event does not lie in the event itself, but in his response to it. Finn also confronts questions about fate through relationships. He learns that no connection is guaranteed, and no bond is frozen in time. Friendships evolve, love changes form. People drift apart or return in unexpected ways. Finn accepts that relationships follow their own natural flow. This acceptance frees him from the desire to force outcomes. Instead, he focuses on sincerity in the present moment, trusting that the future will unfold as it needs to. Another important moment comes when Finn reflects on his father. At first, he believes that meeting him might give him answers or closure. But their relationship does not follow the path Finn hoped for. Accepting this truth teaches him that destiny does not guarantee harmony. Family connections do not automatically carry emotional depth. Choice becomes the tool that protects Finn's heart. He chooses not to follow a path that would harm him. He chooses to build his own meaning instead of searching for it in someone else. This acceptance reinforces his emotional independence. Finn's understanding of fate also evolves as he watches others around him follow their own paths. Jake grows into his role as a parent. Princess Bubblegum continues to balance leadership and vulnerability. Marceline explores her identity across centuries. Each of them faces choices shaped by experiences Finn cannot fully share. Acceptance teaches him that fate belongs to everyone, not just to him. He learns to respect the journeys of others without trying to shape them. Throughout these experiences, Finn begins to see fate and choice as a rhythm rather than a conflict. Fate provides the setting, the world, the circumstances. Choice provides direction, emotion, and meaning. Acceptance allows him to walk with both. He understands that life is neither fully determined nor entirely free. It is a collaboration between what is given and what is chosen. This balance becomes one of Finn's deepest sources of peace. He no longer carries the pressure of trying to control everything. He no longer fears the unknown paths ahead. He embraces uncertainty. He trusts himself to make choices guided by compassion, wisdom, and hope. Acceptance transforms fate from something frightening into something gentle. It transforms choice from something pressured into something creative. In the end, acceptance of fate and choice allows Finn to grow into someone who moves through life with clarity. He does not fear the future. He welcomes it. He does not cling to the past. He carries its lessons with calmness. He understands that destiny is not a destination waiting for him. It is the unfolding of every moment he lives. Through acceptance, Finn steps into that unfolding with a peaceful heart, knowing that both fate and choice have shaped him into who he is meant to be. Finn's journey begins with bright simplicity. He sees the world through the eyes of a child who believes every problem has a clear solution, every villain can be defeated, and every emotion can be conquered with enough effort. But as he grows, the world expands around him. Mystery deepens, relationships shift, emotions become more complex. Finn discovers that life is not defined by straightforward paths, but by the quiet lessons that unfold through experience. Acceptance becomes the thread that ties everything together, shaping him into a balanced, thoughtful, and deeply empathetic young man. To understand the full shape of Finn's acceptance, it helps to look at the landscape of his growth. Each lesson builds upon the one before, forming a pattern of emotional resilience and wisdom. Acceptance begins in his childhood, woven into the reality that he never knew his original family. His abandonment could have left him feeling incomplete, yet he learns to trust the love of Joshua, Margaret, and Jake. This early acceptance allows him to grow from a place of security rather than fear. It sets the foundation for the emotional maturity that follows. As Finn matures, he learns to accept change in himself. His body grows, his thoughts deepen, and his heart becomes capable of holding emotions he never knew existed. He learns that growing up is not about shedding the past, but about expanding beyond it. Acceptance helps him navigate these transitions without losing the kindness and courage that define him. It teaches him that time brings both loss and discovery, and that both are essential parts of becoming whole. Throughout his adventures, Finn discovers that people are far more complex than he once believed. Princess Bubblegum holds compassion and severity within the same heart. Marceline carries both humour and centuries of pain. Jake balances light-heartedness with quiet wisdom. Finn accepts these complexities, learning to see others without reducing them to single traits. This acceptance deepens his relationships and helps him approach conflicts with empathy instead of judgment. Mistakes also become important teachers. Finn learns to accept that even with good intentions, he can hurt others, misunderstand situations, or act impulsively. These moments challenge him, but they do not break him. Acceptance gives him the courage to apologize sincerely, reflect honestly, and grow from experience instead of shrinking from it. Through each mistake, Finn becomes more aware of how his actions affect others and how accountability strengthens connection. Love provides another avenue for acceptance. Finn experiences affection, romantic hope, emotional confusion, and heartbreak. He learns that love can shift in shape, fade, or transform into something gentler. Acceptance helps him move through these transitions without bitterness. He discovers that love is meaningful even when it does not last forever, and that every connection adds to his emotional understanding. Through acceptance, he discovers that love is not about possession, it is about presence, growth, and mutual respect. As friendships evolve, acceptance becomes even more important. Jake builds his own family. Marceline explores her emotional history. Bubblegum continues to lead her kingdom. Each change pulls relationships in new directions. Finn learns that closeness does not disappear when life shifts. It adapts. Acceptance allows him to appreciate these changes without clinging to past versions of his relationships. He trusts the emotional foundation he shares with others, knowing that true friendship survives transformation. Responsibility brings its own lessons. Finn once believed that being a hero meant solving every problem and protecting everyone. But he gradually understands that responsibility must be shared, not shouldered alone. Acceptance helps him find balance between helping others and caring for himself. It teaches him when to step forward and when to let others lead. This balance becomes one of the quiet strengths that carries him into adulthood. Finn's encounters with cosmic forces show him the limits of power. The world contains mysteries that cannot be controlled, villains that cannot be defeated through strength alone, and timelines that unfold in unpredictable ways. Instead of despairing, Finn learns to accept what is beyond his reach. He discovers that powerlessness is not the opposite of strength. It is a different space where resilience grows. Acceptance helps him remain grounded, even when faced with forces far greater than himself. Family truths also shape him. Meeting his biological father brings disappointment and clarity. Finn learns to accept that some relationships cannot be repaired, and that blood ties do not guarantee emotional closeness. This acceptance frees him from unrealistic expectations and helps him appreciate the family he already has. He embraces the idea that family is chosen as much as it is inherited. This emotional independence becomes an important part of his identity. Healing and suffering intertwine throughout Finn's journey. He faces heartbreak, fear, loneliness, and uncertainty. Acceptance allows him to feel these emotions without being overwhelmed by them. He learns that healing comes in waves, that some wounds take time, and that others never fully disappear but can be carried with grace. Through acceptance, he gains emotional endurance that helps him support others through their pain as well. Identity becomes a lifelong exploration. Finn learns that he is shaped by experiences, not defined by one role. He is an adventurer, a friend, a brother, a human, a learner, a dreamer, and someone who continues to grow with each passing moment. Acceptance frees him from needing to fit into a single label. It allows him to evolve without fear, trusting that each version of himself contributes to a fuller, more compassionate whole. Fate and choice become intertwined in Finn's understanding of life. He sees that some circumstances are beyond him, while others depend entirely on his decisions. Acceptance helps him navigate this balance without feeling trapped or overwhelmed. He learns that destiny is created moment by moment through choices aligned with his heart. Acceptance becomes the guidance that steadies him within the unpredictable flow of life. Together, these lessons form the full shape of Finn's acceptance. It is not a single idea, it is a living practice. It shows itself when he forgives himself for mistakes, when he listens to the emotions of others, when he releases relationships that must change, when he honours his own needs, and when he embraces uncertainty with hope rather than fear. Finn becomes someone who carries acceptance like a quiet light. It softens his steps, deepens his compassion, and strengthens his resilience. It helps him remain brave without becoming rigid, kind without becoming overwhelmed, and thoughtful without becoming closed off. Through acceptance, he grows into a young man who meets life with understanding rather than resistance. In the end, Acceptance is not a conclusion for Finn. It is an ongoing journey, a way of living with openness. It allows him to hold joy and sorrow in the same heart, to walk forward even when the path is not clear, and to remain true to himself in a world that changes constantly. Through acceptance, Finn discovers the peaceful truth that he does not need all the answers to live a meaningful life. He only needs to meet each moment with honesty, courage, and compassion.